Hello, everyone. Today we have the lovely Lana with us, and we'll just start us off. How long have you been diabetic, Anna?
It's 11 years as of last month. So it was about 2008.
11 years.
Yeah.
All right. When did you start out? What did they tell you when you were diagnosed? Like how to take care of it?
Um, Really vividly, I mean, I was down at Children's Hospital in Seattle, and I remember it just kind of being like, eat whatever the heck you want, just count carbs and give the insulin dose for it. Just go about your normal life. I was in the hospital, I think, for like 3 or 4 days, but it was basically, off you go. Um, and that's what I did for like about 9 years, was I just ate what I had eaten for 16 years, until about 2 years ago when I found low carb.
So before then, what were you eating exactly?
I don't feel like I was eating really unhealthy. I mean, my mom always cooked us, family dinner at night, which was usually a meat, and there was like some sort of vegetable, and there was usually like potatoes or pasta, things like that. My grandma's in her 90s and she's still kicking and doing really well for being in her 90s. So I know longevity runs in my family. And so I ate whole grains and, wheat bread and rice, and just tried to stay away from what my mom called, junk food and sugary cereals and stuff like that. So what I thought to be a healthy diet.
So you're basically following the ADA recommendations regardless, even if you're eating
Yeah.
what you want.
Yeah,
Just as,
exactly.
it's an improvement compared to some. When I was diagnosed, I took it as a free meal ticket to eat whatever I wanted. That didn't turn out well. But anyways, you said you were 2 years ago. So, but for about 9 years, you were doing it this kind of way, just eating whatever and taking insulin for it. How was that going for you?
Uh, it was just a nightmare that I felt like I could never wake up from, and that was just going to be my existence for the rest of whatever kind of life I would have. Didn't really have any complications that I was aware of at all. I was really lucky in that sense, but I was gaining weight, and I could never lose weight. It was always just, well, that's just what insulin does. You take more insulin because you're, insulin resistant, and I was upping my doses of insulin all the time, and I was never, like, my blood sugar was just always hard to manage. And so it was just kind of a nightmare. And I felt depressed. And I'm sure my blood sugars were, just always in the 200-300s, just constantly. So I got used to feeling like that.
Yeah, that's not a good feeling.
No.
So you had no complications, but your blood sugars were all over the place.
Yeah, I'd have wild, just massive swings in my blood sugar, and I hated going to endocrinologist just because I never left happy afterwards. It was always like kind of a scolding of, why aren't you doing better? I'm doing exactly what they're saying, and I'm not getting the results they say that I should be getting. So it was just always frustrating, and looking back, I was maybe just kind of wishing that there was a different way to do it, but just not having any sort of idea of what that would be.
Yeah, of course they don't tell you about the things we talk about.
Oh.
So they weren't happy with your results. What exactly were your results? Where was your A1C at?
I can remember, I go through periods where I would like not check my blood sugar like for days at a time, just because I was diagnosed when I was 16, and I was just very much, I didn't want to be different. I didn't want to deal with it. I didn't want to change what I had been doing for 16 years. So I would have A1Cs. I think I remember some of them being in the 12s or 13s, but I get it down to like maybe about a low 9 or a high 8 when I wanted to get approved for an insulin pump or a CGM. I'd kind of work really hard to get it a little bit lowered, but I could never, no matter how hard I tried, I could never get a normal A1C.
Did you ever try that thing where, because I know A1C is 3 months ahead. Despite that, when I was a kid, I always try to take better care of myself that last month before I see a doctor.
or that last week even, just hoping that it'll help. Yeah, totally did that.
I know what that's like.
Yeah, it's not fun when you feel like you're doing what they tell you to do and it's not working, and then you're gonna get yelled at for doing what they've been telling you to do. So
What else were they telling you to do?
it was just, eat 3 meals, eat snacks in between, and exercise, and make sure you're getting like 15 grams of carbs in your snacks, and then like 45 grams of carbs at least for each meal or more. And it was, eat whole grains and don't restrict yourself too much on that stuff because you need carbs. They're good for you.
That's the real rub for me. Well, at least you followed that advice coming from them. So what gave you the switch 2 years ago exactly? Did you hit a breaking point? What was happening then?
Yeah, so it was kind of a sequence of events that just kind of lined up perfectly in my life. That I hit like a weight that just terrified me, and then I moved, and I wanted to try Weight Watchers for the first time, and that was when I really started to like track the carbs that I was eating. And just the like realization that I was eating, 250 grams of carbs, and hearing that, I thought, oh my God, that's a ton of carbs. But realizing that that's kind of normal. It's like 250, 300 is a pretty average number. And I was just kind of horrified by that. And I think I was on a message board and I saw someone, because I was trying to figure out how to lose weight. I was exercising and then my sugars would tank, and then I'd have to, eat a bunch of carbs to save myself from a low. And I couldn't figure it out. And I saw on a message board, someone was like, oh, well, why don't you just stop eating carbs? And I was like, well, you can do that? It was just this like huge epiphany to me that you could just not eat a bunch of carbs.
Just clicked in your head, huh?
Yeah, and that's when I found Dr. Bernstein's book, and I was like, I read that thing cover to cover, and I was like, I cannot believe there's people that live like this. And within a day of trying it, I was like, oh my God, this is like a secret of the universe that I found.
So before we get deep into that, were there any other problems you had going through those first 9 years?
No, not really. I haven't had any eye problems. I maybe had a couple different issues sometimes with my kidneys, but tests would come back again and be like, nope, you're fine. I had some issues with my thyroid. I've been diagnosed and undiagnosed with Hashimoto's like twice now, which is bizarre. Yeah, and so I'm kind of going my own route. My doctor isn't as supportive of testing the things that I want to be tested and prescribing the medications I want to treat those issues. So I've kind of gone a different route so I don't have to rely on a doctor for that. But that seems to be doing great now. So, and low carbs definitely helped.
And I want to ask, you mentioned you started tracking your carbs. Were you not really counting your carbs before and then? Because what I've done was always counting my carbs.
I mean, I've counted carbs. Oh, I mean, since being a diabetic, but I guess I've never kept like a running track of it every day. I count carbs for my meal, and it doesn't sound bad if you're just eating 50 carbs. Like, oh yeah, that's just whatever kind of insulin you need for that. But when I was looking at the big picture and then like seeing a whole week's worth, it just it landed differently in my brain that time, and I was like, oh my gosh.
So you had sort of an epiphany there, and then you found out about Bernstein?
Yeah. And then from there, I mean, I found, I started listening to a lot of podcasts and just Facebook groups, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to start doing this. So
where did you discover type 1 grit then?
I did. Yeah. That was probably one of the next Facebook groups I found. And it was just kind of unbelievable that this was like this secret thing that no one had ever brought up to me as a type 1 diabetic. I mean, I've gone to like type 1 diabetic like conferences and stuff, and read a lot of things and a lot of message boards, and I'd never heard of it.
So for those watching who don't know, Type 1 Grit Facebook group, look it up. It's an amazing group. You mentioned conferences. I guess they never mentioned low carb at these Type 1 conferences you went to?
No, and I don't even remember that. It was in Seattle. It was probably around 2009, 2010. But it was more of like an expo conference and not so much a speaker, type of conference. So maybe that's why no one was really talking about it.
Okay. So did you make the switch immediately when you sort of had this epiphany in your head?
Yeah, that's kind of my nature, is to just go, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it all in. And that day, I just stopped with the majority of the carbs I was eating, cut down to 20 a day. And it was like incredible. Even I think in the first 5 hours, I could tell that this was different.
What was different?
Just the control I had. I mean, I was checking my blood sugar, and I think I checked it like 3 or 4 times, because I was like, wait, I'm like at 90 and I just had this meal, and usually I'm at like, 200 and 230. And so just the drastic night and day difference of the control I had was just shocking.
Yeah, when you spike your whole life, you sort of expect it after a while. It's like, oh boy, I'm going to have to deal with this in 30 minutes,
Yeah, you're so right. And I thought, like, did I misdose my insulin? Like, did I count, the carbs I did eat wrong? Like, what I had to check a couple times, because I wasn't used to that at all.
So, did you have trouble starting out, or was it clean cut, ready to go, instantly great results?
I definitely struggled with just figuring out, because at that point I was still on an insulin pump, so I was still adjusting like basal rates and everything, and so that definitely took some time. I definitely crashed a lot, had a lot of low blood sugars in the beginning. And then trying to figure out how to dose the right way for protein, because I'd never really dosed for protein before, being low carb. That wasn't really on my radar. So it was definitely trial and error in the beginning, but I had so much more control, and my lows were so much less. They didn't feel as scary. And it was rough, but it was worth it.
It's good. That's good. So, in comparison to back then, how are you doing now?
Now I feel a lot better. I've gone off the insulin pump, and I'm back onto injections, and I just use Walmart insulin because it seems to work best for low carb. And I feel a lot more secure in not only like my counting of carbs and protein, but just my ability to like make the best choices and to say no. It was definitely, I felt like I could maybe cheat a little bit in the beginning, and, I've eaten low carb, for a month now. So I can have like one meal where I, have some chips or something, but it's a lot less frequent, because I know it's not going to just ruin my blood sugars for that day. I'll probably feel it, days down the line too. So.
Good. And you mentioned you're not on the pump anymore, correct?
Correct.
What do you take for your long-acting insulin? You say you take our insulin for your meals.
Yeah, and then I had like 2 leftover things of Lantus that lasted me a good while after I went off the pump. And so just in the last like 6 months or so, I've gone to Novolin N, which is the NPH,
Yes.
Which has been, I think I've finally figured out how to dose it right. But it took a while. It's different than what I was used to with the Lantus. So a little experimenting. I had to wake up a couple times with some high blood sugars to get it figured out what I had to do to change it.
It can be very tricky.
Now. Yeah, it was really, and I already split my dose in half. So I took half in the morning and half at night, but then I had to split those doses in half and give them in 2 separate injections. So if I don't do that, I'll wake up at like almost 300. But if I do, I'm at like 103 in the morning. So it was just a weird, I don't know what that was, but I figured that out. So it's much better now.
Yeah. One big thing about no matter what you do with diabetes is an experiment. And there's always going to be some rough turns when you change something like that. I'm going through it myself. I just switched to NPH as well. I'm doing it 3 times a day. But enough about me. Enough about me. I'll get to my story in another video. So you mentioned that you have a lot more control now with your blood sugar, right?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
is your A1C now?
Last I checked, it was 6.4. So it's not where I'd want it to be, but it was over the last 2 years, it dropped to like 9, and then it was like in the 7s, and now, so I'm going down every time I go get it checked. So
Work in progress.
yeah,
I can appreciate that.
right. I'm not where I want to be, but I'll take 6.4 over 12 any day. So I'm getting there.
So has anything else changed from then to now? Like, is your mood better or anything like that?
Yeah, so I was suffering from debilitating anxiety. I have probably since about I was diagnosed, and I don't know if it's, just that's just who I'm supposed to be or what. But since I've gone low carb, I've gone off all my medications for anxiety. I mean, I was taking like Xanax and a beta blocker and 2 other medications, Wellbutrin and something else. And I don't need it anymore. I'm not depressed. I'm not anxious. I eat a little bit more of like a carnivore diet. I do like 75 carnivore, 25 keto, just so I can, not be as constricted. But it's like incredibly changed, just my mood and my energy, and I'm not in bed, at 5 p.m. every night. I can be awake and I can get up early and go to work, and my job's definitely emotionally and physically exhausting, and it doesn't feel like that, compared to when I had high blood sugar all the time. It was miserable.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I was going to ask what you were eating, and that really helps. I call that kind of a meat-based keto. You're eating mostly some vegetables sometimes. I'm the same way.
Yeah.
Did you notice a difference between, I assume you didn't start eating mostly carnivore, right? You probably started more on the keto stuff, probably doing the imitation breads and all of that. Did you notice a difference between keto and the more carnivore approach you're on now?
Yeah. So the low carb did really, really great things specifically for my blood sugars. But the carnivore itself, I think that's where the anxiety decrease really kicked in. Just getting out all that extra sugar and stuff, and just the processed and fat bombs and whatever, and just kind of making it more of a meat. And then I have veggies just to like make my mom happy, I'm like having her dinner or something. But I just eat, I eat a lot of meat, and my body just seems to like that more than anything else I've tried. So I like to just stick with that and call it good. So I don't have bloating. I don't have, digestive problems. I can just feel good. So
it's a lot simpler. And I'm the same way. At this point, though, my family's learned not to bring it up, because if they do, I'll talk my head off and they won't appreciate it. It's like,
I feel ya.
I'll let him do his thing. Okay. That's great. That's great to hear, though. So you've gotten better control. You've got a more stable mood. Fortunately, you haven't had it long enough to suffer any major complications. So nothing big to reverse, just pretty good.
Yeah, I'm very lucky in that sense. Very, very lucky.
Yeah, same here. Same here. Well, I guess that sells it for the difference. Is there anything you like to tell any diabetics that are watching this right now, curious about low carb?
Oh, I mean, I guess I'm of the thought of just jump in and try it. I mean, that's what I did, and I kind of figured out my mistakes on the way. But I know that's not everybody's, way of functioning. But definitely, seek out all the resources. And I know Dr. Bernstein has that great book, and he has his YouTube station where he has all those videos, and there's a bunch of podcasts. And I think it's good to just dive in, even if it's just diving into the research, into the, personal stories. I think they speak very loudly. So that's my advice. Just give it a try. I mean, you'll see results. Like, I think most people will see results within a day, just of their control and of their numbers. And it's just such a relief to know that I'm going to look at my meter, and it's not going to be a scary number. Like just now before this, I tested and I was 76. I'm like, oh, well, I'm still surprised even like 2 years later. I'm like, oh, Okay.
So, well, I don't
Oh,
have to correct anything, huh?
yeah, it's
That's
like,
great.
oh, okay. I guess I won't then. Yeah, I just think, it's wonderful. It's changed my life for the better. Uh, and if anyone's out there feeling like that, this just their existence is going to be, feeling awful and suffering, it doesn't have to be like that.
I'll ask one more thing because I feel like this is one of the main qualms people have with starting this. It's very daunting. Would you consider it easier or harder to manage now?
I mean, I guess it's harder in the sense that, yeah, you have to maybe plan social events around food and stuff, but it's just so much easier in that you know what you can eat and what you can't. I mean, to me, it was just kind of like, oh, yeah, I like all this food that doesn't have a lot of carbs in it, so I'm just going to get rid of everything else. So to me, it was really easy, and it was easy just knowing that I could afford the Walmart insulin, the R and the N, and so that's kind of helped lock me into low carb. Not that I've wanted to leave, but it's been easy, feeling good, knowing when you have a choice between what to eat, one's going to make you feel really great and give you control, and the other's going to spike you and make you feel awful. The choice gets easier the more you make it. So.
Yeah, I understand completely. I feel the same way. You have any final thoughts?
No, I think it's awesome what you're doing. I think this is just wonderful. More people need to know. I wish, it would be something taught in hospitals when people are diagnosed, especially young kids. It doesn't have to be this big restrictive diet that stops kids from being kids or stops people from getting to enjoy life. You can still enjoy life, but eat low carb. Those things don't have to happen together. So.
Yeah, kids can be kids while still eating right, the way I see it.
Right. Yeah. And eating healthy foods and feeling good.
Yeah, I agree 100%. One day, hopefully, times will change.
Exactly.
I think that's happening. I think that's getting there, but these kind of wheels turn very slowly.
They do.
But we'll end it at that. I think
Right.
that was a very good story.
Right.
Thank you so much for your time, Lana. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, Justin.
Yes. Say bye, everyone. So long, feminists. Until next time, have a wonderful day.